No, it's fine. I can edit all this stuff out.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome to the V2V podcast. My name is Marcus Parrish, and this is another episode of the Survivor series. And if you haven't heard what we've been doing previously, we've been speaking to survivors of the troubled teen industry, wilderness camps, therapeutic boarding schools. It's kind of all under one big umbrella, and it's commonly referred to as TTI, or the troubled teen industry. So you can go back and check out all these other interviews if you like before you listen to this, because this episode is really about kind of the aftermath of what happens to some people when they leave and grow up. And what we're talking about today is bullying, survivor to survivor aggression and dislike or attacks, things like that. And we want to get to kind of the heart of the matter and discover, why that happens. Is it something that has been fostered by the institutions themselves? Does it relate to being isolated from the real world for a time and been given a bunch of information about how things work while institutionalized, and then people get released and don't know how to function aside from the techniques and tactics that they've been taught while teens under coercion, living under abuse? Is that it? And so my guest today is once again the great Liz Ianelli. Welcome.
I'm back.
She's back, ladies and gentlemen. And so, we're talking today about bullying, and specifically bullying by survivors. So let's get into it. What is this all about? Why do people do this?
I thought that many times over the years. I'll briefly share. I'm coming from this from a personal and the clinical context today. About a year ago, before I was about to go
before you get into it, hold on, I'm sorry. Before you get into it, can you share a little bit about, I guess, your professional background to give people some idea of where you're coming from in a professional sense? Okay.
Absolutely. I am a New York State licensed clinical social worker. I exclusively provide therapy to survivors of the troubled teen industry and their families in a wide variety of ways. And so I'm classically, trained in social work and mixed in with psychology and some forensics. I have a little over a decade and a half, worth of solid education. Add that with life experience. I'm also a survivor of a troubled teen industry program. And it's been a rocky road for me. And I've also, myself personally, have been a victim of this type of bullying within the survivor community. So I'm kind of a conglomerate today, kind of trying to balance out what I know clinically and what, on the smaller side, what I experienced personally. So I can really, truly speak to both sides. And my goal is to help those who are listening understand intrinsically kind of the anatomy of a bully and the pathology behind it, and then the negative ramifications for survivors, because we are a special population and we are an endangered species, and the bullying within the survivor community is a very unique phenomenon if you look at it from 40,000 feet. The matrix is much more complicated than young children bullying each other at school. There are different factors in play for us. So
okay, good. That clears things up a little bit, because I always want to be sure to in situations where there's some assessment or an examination of a particular subject, it's important to let people understand that the people that we're talking to have some real experience in what it is that they're talking about. So I just,
Absolutely.
because, and it's interesting, because without this kind of preface or look at where a particular person is coming from in that sense, you yourself or others can become inadvertent victims of bullying by people who may want to claim, otherwise. Like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, but clearly you do, and you can be.
Right.
We can provide links to your professional background and your own testimonials. Sure. There's an interview that you did with me a month ago regarding your own personal experience as a troubled teen, in scare quotes, of course.
Yep.
So I just wanted to get that out of the way to avoid a situation kind of like what we're going to be discussing, which is kind of sad in a way that we actually need to do that,
Yeah, and this is kind of a taboo subject. This is kind of one of the ones that it exists, but it's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes, and it rears its ugly head at very inopportune times. But
sure.
I'm not a savant, okay, and I don't have all the answers. I can only speak from what I know professionally and personally. And not for nothing, if the attacks come my way, they won't be a surprise. So,
right.
It's an inherent risk.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully we'll.
But
hopefully
you know
we'll
what?
clear
Even
the
if
air
it does,
and
but even if it does, it'll reinforce what I'm about to explain. So either way,
sure.
I kind of want to allow survivors, and even for if there are any of the bullies or followers of bullies listening, you can understand where and why you fit into this mold. And so this is education across the board. This is not, I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, not to attack and reiterate the same behavior. I'm simply providing education, which can lend itself to more of an understanding across the board.
Okay.
So with that, just a couple of points I kind of wanted to touch on to kind of explain, I guess, the anatomy of a bully. Before I do that, I'll give just a very brief synopsis. Like I was starting to say, about a year ago, I was invited to go on national television to talk about my work as a therapist with survivors and to help highlight some of the dangers and red flags of the troubled teen industry and how to help parents make more informed decisions. The opportunity came up very quickly. It was unexpected. And just as quick as the offer came, on Facebook and social media by a small group of people, they were making a claim that because the show I was going to go on had an affiliation with Dr. Phil, who is known to have sent children to these programs, which are harmful, because they shared a production company, was the kind of bottom line that I was kind of sleeping with the enemy if I appeared on this show. My perspective of going on the show was that the more that the message could be relayed, however so, I was more about the message and the opportunity to speak out than I really was about where it was or where it wasn't. And the irony for me was it was the ultimate fuck you, because if this production company is, and their affiliation with Dr. Phil, great. Let me come out here and clear this up for you. I was looking at it as an opportunity to kind of push back and make my point. But it was perceived as I was now the enemy and that I was about to make a very bad decision to join enemy forces and become one of over what I would have attributed to a trivial fact, but I wasn't negating the fact. I was fully aware of the affiliation, but but my message far outweighed any affiliation that was plausible. And
right.
I
That
was
argument, right. But that argument that you can't go on this particular platform because they have some affiliation with what is clearly seen as negative. The irony of this is that you were getting these messages from Facebook, so
right.
it kind of negates the argument that because you're going on a particular show to talk about something positive, and they've done other shows regarding stuff that we all agree that are negative and harmful to people by sending kids
right.
to these schools. Well, doesn't that mean that if you're on Facebook and anything negative associated with Facebook, aren't you also painted with that? Which is, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I think that's ridiculous. But there's that mindset about like, I would rather feel right than to actually be right. Like it feels good in the mind of someone who's a bully to project their rightness, even though they clearly know that the argument they're making is bullshit.
Well, actually, they don't. They
don't
actually
know that.
don't.
Okay.
But no, bullies, they tend to have an innate ability to justify their actions. Typically, they are, studies show that bullies have a distinct lack of pro-social behavior, meaning they're not generally affected and they don't have a realistic perceptions of other people's reactions to their behaviors. And they also tend to misread the intentions of others, and they insert hostility into actually very neutral situations. And, ironically, bullies have a very general perceptions of themselves in a positive light, and they will latch on to something that they feel is righteous and true. And in one aspect, they were right. There is an affiliation, there was some substance to their concern. However, the way it played out was wrong and terroristic. And so what happened to me through that...
Right. So getting back to what you were saying about being on this program, there's also a network associated with that show. Now, do they...
Yeah, there's...
You know what I mean? Like you could draw this out continuously.
You could draw the map all the way through Hollywood, okay? And not for nothing, for the 12 minutes of airtime that ran, there were, I couldn't tell you how many hours of angst and I contemplated me, and I think I'm pretty strong. I was having extreme anxiety, panic attacks. I was about to back out any moment. I felt the whole world was against me trying to do something for the greater good. I was not understanding why personally attack me for trying to bring awareness to our cause. And it created... Were you starting
to believe it? I'm sorry. Were you starting to believe what they were saying to you in some way?
In some ways, I didn't believe it. Did it influence me? Did it scare me? Yeah. Was I...
Well, clearly something happened, right?
Right.
You got anxious and nervous, right?
Yeah, and then, I would block the people that were coming at me. And then through other channels, through other social media, there were ways that they were able to reach me. And friends were sending screenshots, like just FYIs. I felt there was no way out, and I couldn't stop it. And I knew it. I wanted to beg and plead, please stop hurting me, but I had to try and stay true to myself, and I was willing to take the risk under great duress up until the moment. What people don't know is that within the 10 minutes before you saw me pop on the show that I was on set, I was actually locked in a bathroom in Paramount Studios refusing to come out. and I had to call a friend to talk me down. I was having a massive panic attack, and I had been unraveling for 2 days in California, and I was wishing that I was anywhere but there. And 10 minutes later, camera's on, and it was go time. And then from the time I filmed to the time it aired was about a month and a half, which was even worse, because then it enters your mind, well, are they going to chop up what I said? Did I do the right thing? Are they going to exploit me? Are they going to this? Are they going to that? And so it perpetuated this really dangerous cycle, all from me agreeing to have access to a national daytime platform to talk about the industry. So there's that.
Right, and there's more going on too, because as these people come out of the woodwork and started attacking you for this decision to go on a program to talk about things that they care about,
right?
But they just seem to not agree with the format or the platform. What happened when you started having to disassociate and block people? That compounded your feelings of loneliness and anxiety, because I'm sure that in a lot of these cases, the people that kind of came up and started saying harsh things to you hadn't shown that capacity before. Like,
right, and the most disturbing part,
a lot of this was new, so you had all this. You're dealing with remorse from losing contacts or friends, even like that. So.
Well,
and I mean,
the interesting thing for me was that, it was directed from a very small group of other survivors, and I felt a great betrayal among the survivor community from this very small group. What the worst part about it for me was seeing how many people were in agreement, or their silence was their consent, or they were just watching it happen or participating in it. I felt like I was in a blanket party and people were just joining in for the fun of it. And I couldn't stop it. So I felt re-victimized. And I did the show, and nothing bad happened to me. So I learned a lesson that the risk was far less than the reward in the end. But I didn't know it until then. Did any of the people who were against your appearance come back, or have they remained on their viewpoint that what you did made you guilty by association? Like, how did that actually play out at the end? Do you know? It didn't really play out at all. It aired. It went, and I didn't want to know. There was some fuss, after it aired, but, and again, I was on the show with other survivors, 2 other survivors, and also, a mother whose, son was, who died in a wilderness program. So I was one of 4. I kind of just ducked for cover and just kept moving because I had other work to do.
Right.
But,
so how does this happen? I guess that's the next question, really. Is like, how does this, I mean, we heard your experience, we heard your story about you trying to spread awareness, raise consciousness levels so that people, can become more informed about what these places are, what really happens there. And you were getting flack from people who had been there, one would assume that anyone who would gone through something like that and come out the other side and then became part of a survivor community wouldn't have these points of view. Like, that would be my first assumption.
Right.
That
and
anyone who's been through this would be accommodating to anyone who wanted to speak out from any point of view, any platform. Like, yes, you're going, like, to the enemy and standing on their stage, so to speak, and telling the truth. So that's really great because the show tomorrow is going to be about sending some kid away.
Right, or whatever it was. And the positive feedback
this happen?
far outweighs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's break it down. So the anatomy of a bully, I guess, is the title I guess I would use for this segment. You know.
Sure.
Bullies are not born; they're made. They have a very typically low self-esteem, and it fuels their implicit need to perpetuate fear in others of their own perceived power. They typically have strained relationships with a lot of their peers and family, and bullies can't exist without victims. They're also, contrary to popular belief, they are very selective in their intended targets. Bullies are like sharks. They can detect blood in the water miles away. So their perceived weakness or vulnerability about someone, they can smell that and instinctively they gravitate towards that. And most bullies actually are acutely unaware of the internal injuries that they inflict on their victims. They tend to latch on to ways to justify their behavior in a very public stance. If you're looking at bullies as children, okay, the bullying takes place, or used to when I was in school, on the playground. Recess was like high traffic time for someone's getting hung by their underpants, somewhere, okay?
Right.
But as adults now, with social media at our fingertips, you can remain anonymous. You can hide behind a computer. You don't have to face the person that you are hurting, which actually lends itself to giving the person who's perpetrating that abuse more power or more of an illusion of power from a safe place. And they don't see the end. It's like dropping a drone or operating a drone in the States and dropping it in Afghanistan. You don't have to see the wrath. You can just watch it unfold on TV. You're not there to hear everybody screaming and crying. You push a button and it goes.
Right.
Adult bullies actually have a pathology that is deeply rooted in using what's called fear-driven manipulation. That it's exactly what it says. That is like the fuel that they fuel up their car with. It's that. And this is not typical in like the child versus adult bullies. Adult bullies, children bullies, like young, are very invested in humiliating or controlling their other child victims. Adult bullies have a compulsion to silence their victims by using this fear-driven manipulation. They want to silence them. And that is across the board, like even outside the survivor community, that's how adult bullies work. They want to silence the other person or intimidate them to not speak out, not come forward, not launch, not be seen, And so if you look at in the program, okay, so survivors who become or maintain a bully standpoint, we have to really look at them with a sense of understanding that they too are suffering. And that might be a highly charged response to that statement, but I mean that.
Right,
bullies,
that's the most important and somewhat tragic part of this whole thing. Like, it really is.
Tragic. It's so tragic because this isn't about I feel sorry for them. This is me acknowledging and leaning into their pain and saying that bullies, they are suffering in ways that not all of us may understand. They have,
right.
You take low self-esteem, and then in the programs you inject that, or the programs injected positively reinforced aggression. Okay, so they lower your self-esteem, they reinforce your aggressive behavior, and that's really the perfect formula, and that's essentially the matrix of the making of a bully. They lack an organized system of interpersonal communication and often become victims of themselves, okay? So they learn to communicate only through actions that generate fear in others. So in essence, the program latched onto them in such a violent way that they've coped. It's actually their coping strategy. Bullies are bullies because that's the only way they know how to cope. So, it's in a weird way, you take someone on heroin, right? You look at them like, how could you, or just get it together or stop using and your life will be fine. But this illusion of power or control for them, this is the only way they can eradicate from themselves any of their low self-esteem, low self-worth, feeling of lack of importance, need to feel powerful. So it's literally they're injected with this kind of matrix pumping through their veins. And bullies, adults, especially survivors in this case, they're able to make peace with their actions, and they see the world in what I would call three colors, okay? Bullies see the world as one. Most things they're looking at are a perceived threat. The second would be a perceived need to insult or demarcate or kind of like chop in half whatever the threat is that they're perceiving. And they also have a notion, once they latch onto an idea, okay, so it was latched onto that the affiliation of the show I was going to go on was perceived as a righteous reason to raise a concern. And because of that, and the third color that the bully saw in that moment was that this perceived notion that I was asking for it, that I was inviting this behavior to come to my door because I was a threat. They perceived me as insulting the community by doing this or sleeping with the enemy. And they concluded solidly that I was asking for it. Therefore, it was justified. And it's
really interesting.
I think it's fascinating, because this is,
exactly because this really mirrors in so many ways the structure and the mechanics of these programs themselves.
Right, and like
as a newcomer, you're on the at the sub basement level of like worth in the community, in the program, and you need to conform to level up when there are other children who've been there longer, who have more authority.
Right.
They are covered by the adult staff who impose their coercive authority on the kids to then pass that down to the others.
Right. And
so
that's exactly
there's this whole system of coercion and abuse that is taught.
And exactly, and that
so you go out into the world. You go out into the world, and the world doesn't really function like that in normal society. Like, you can't just order somebody to do something and they're going to comply. Like, they will probably fight back, which is not allowed in program. I mean, that can get you into big trouble or get isolated or lose privileges and things like that.
And what survivor bullies are acting out is really their own revenge fantasy, but they're not recognizing that the revenge is not on us. I use the word revenge carefully, but what if all of the energy and anger, whether it's right or wrong, what if that was diverted towards those who put us in this position in the first place? There's just think of how far we could go. And so there's like this kind of, I don't want to say a full divide, but it's almost like the Hunger Games. Like, there's two different sectors now, and that shouldn't have to be. And the bullies who are survivors, and I'll get to the program piece that's like perfectly leading into the next point, those who are still acting out program behavior, they need to generate their own confidence to kind of feed their sense of superiority, which was robbed from them at gunpoint in the program. And, so there's this intrinsic need for them to dominate, and that's how they cope. So if you look at the programs, like we'll shift to like, well, where does this start or come from? The programs generated low self-esteem. If you had any, they were going to take it from you. Okay, it was literally you were raped and robbed at gunpoint of things that are general human rights. And I use those violent terms because that's exactly what happened to all of us. They
Right.
took any sense of control that we had from us, from the way we dressed, the way we ate, the way we slept, the way we thought. They inserted a highly aggressive and violent culture into a child's undeveloped or fully developed brain, and our hardwiring changed. There is biology behind this, but I'm not going to bore you with that yet. They took our voice. They took our ability to make free choices. We had no free will or no right to self-determine. They bred bullies within a peer group to maintain control over us. Many people ask me, Liz, there was only, 20 staff and 120 of you. You could have taken over, mutiny, burnt it down. Well, that sounds great. I mean, I would totally, if I could go back in time and do that, I'm in, okay? But I can't. But they used us to enforce our own, we were like our own security force within ourselves, which could turn at any time. And we were groomed. We were all essentially turned into dogs that were all put in a cage and trained to fight. And so we could never have even established, they prevented us from establishing a wolf pack order within us because we were all kept at the same levels. Even if you were at the top level of the program or, the highest phase and a newcomer, you could shift, you were on quicksand, okay? You could change at any moment.
Right.
So the only power we had was a complete illusion of power. They interrupted our, in terms of attachment theory, they killed that, okay? Like we've all, I can't speak for everyone, but most of the patients that I work with and survivors and myself, okay? Like let's talk about that. In terms of attachment theory, that got fucked up because trusting someone, being able to attach to someone in a healthy way, being able to love and deserve love and to feel happiness without guilt. If anyone finds the secret to that, call me. And they warped our sense of interpersonal. I don't use the word relationships because we were prohibited from having relationships. We were allowed to have arrangements. So, and our arrangements were based on survival. So they took that from us as well. So we didn't learn how to develop any sense of self-control, even with someone else. And they rearranged our hierarchy of need. So, we, or at least myself or a lot of the people that I work with, we're more concerned in relationships and in life are, will I be fed? Will I be housed? Will I be clothed? Will I be safe? Will I be taken care of, protected? Do they love me? Does it matter? Maybe they like me? I don't know. So we come flying out of this program with all of this aggression, with having had no self-control, and then we actually lose complete control by trying to gain control back in our lives once we think that the minute we exit that warehouse or the minute we leave that property, that we are now in control, and we're not. And so, we go out into the world, and so bullies who are still continuing this behavior, really all you're saying is like, hey, program, you won, okay? I am exactly what you want me to be. I am still ripping people down. I am still, every program sold us on very legitimate, well, I wouldn't say that, but, you're a drug addict, therefore you need help, even if you weren't. You need, you masturbate too much, so we're going to punish you because we love you so much. Everything was twisted. And so those who leave the program, and these bullies, okay, that linger or lurk, they generally have had a really rough go at integrating back into society. Many of them may have experienced homelessness, socioeconomic struggle, disconnection from family, limited peers. Their only social contact maybe from the guy at the corner where they buy their cigarettes and the internet. We don't know. But they
Right.
likely don't have a very healthy, supportive, nurturing community around them to give them a purpose other than coming out of constructively raising concerns. I would have much rathered someone call me personally or message me and say, "Hey, Liz, it's your potential bully. Before I take to war with you online, I wanted to ask you, are you aware of the affiliation? Or do you understand our concerns? I don't like what you're doing, but I know why you're doing it. Can we talk about it?" Dude, I'll have that conversation, even if we disagree. But to skip the interpersonal part, which is where bullies don't have that tool in their box, they take to social media, and then what happens afterwards, the saddest phenomenon that I've watched is that the mob mentality or the group think is replicated. So then you see so-and-so signing on and this person signing on and this person getting fueled up and everyone plays the game, follow the leader. What's that game Simon says, green go,
right, or
Mother
right,
May
or the
I
game
don't know
of
what
telephone where or telephone where one person says something and by the time the message gets down the line, it's completely changed and not anything like what originally was even intended. Like you were saying that if someone would come to you and say, "Hey, I've got some concerns," but instead of going to you, to the source, they're going to tell their friend something negative, and that person will pass along that negative aspect and maybe add something or subtract something. So by the time the whole group kind of gets on board with this, it's not even the original concern. It's, oh, that person is bad because I said or he said so. And here's a little something that you don't even know where it came from, but like some manufactured negative thing that is inserted into that argument that you as the target might have a really hard time refuting because you can't disprove a negative. Like it's you can't. There's nothing to argue back with. Like if someone just makes some radical claim about you, you don't have any ammunition to disarm that. What do you do?
And what's sad is that survivors, thankfully I knew enough and I had enough people around me to kind of be my rabbi and say, "Liz, don't engage. Just let it lie." And that was difficult for me because I'm a straight shooter,
Right.
And so I that was the decision that I made. But what's so sad for me is that when I see the people who get incited into this riot, it's like looting. Well, everyone's running the streets, so it becomes like martial law. There are no rules. Everybody get in on it. And sometimes what I see is
martial
that,
law.
and I know, right? Wouldn't you love it? So I'm an anarchist at heart.
Hey, you and me both, kid.
Right. All right. So we'll take it to the streets. But there goes my license. So what happens though is, all right, there it go. Okay, if anyone's gonna come at me for that, I'll take it. I earned it.
No, you definitely.
Either way, so what happens is that the survivors who kind of jump onto the riot bus, I guess if you will, some of them I know have jumped on. I've had patients who have described to me why they've done things that they've done. They feel terrible about. But sometimes survivors jump on the battle bus because they're afraid that if they don't join the person leading the death march, that they will become a target. So it's not one size fits all. So to avoid safety, if I'm in a gunfight, okay, let's be clear, if it's going down, and I'm running out of ammo, but the dude over there has 30 more clips, I might go hide behind his table, okay? Like, it's like, it's a shitty analogy, but some kids in fear of being on the other side or be retaliating for not supporting someone who they perceive as being powerful, it's again this fear-driven manipulation. So the bully uses it to gather all their goose on the battle bus, and then they use fear-driven manipulation against survivors who are trying to help the community. And there's nothing wrong with questioning everything. Okay, we should. If anyone should question anything, it's us. But in the way that
think about
is done.
Right.
Go ahead.
Think about a parent who is faced with this very thing where they, for whatever reason, whether it's neglect or a genuinely troubled teen or boredom with parenting or whatever the case is, whatever reason they want to shuffle their kid away. They're under that same kind of pressure by being bullied by programs, and then they say, you know what, you have more resources than I do, so
and by other parents,
out of fear, I'm going to jump on board with you because you clearly have more power and authority than I do. So against my best wishes right.
Yeah, and the programs will use other parents, so your parents' peers are like, hey, you better send your kid. So, and the thing about, the thing that I want to kind of like redirect is like, okay, now we kind of know like the skeleton of like, the making of a bully or the anatomy or pathology of a bully, and we can acknowledge, and I will acknowledge to any bully listening to this now, I see that you are suffering. I acknowledge that. But but the way that you're conducting business is causing harm. And what troubles me the most is that as a survivor community, there are OGs like me and people who have been around and kind of in the trenches for a long time. Yes. Is there a certain level of respect that is kind of owed to those? I mean, there's blood all over me from literally crawling on my hands and knees for years without social media, without any campaigns, without anybody even knowing I existed, okay? So there's blood on all of us who have been in the trenches, and we are kind of underutilized stages, if you will, to kind of hand down to the younger generation of survivors, because you know what? I'm fucking tired, all right? Like, I support and I am all for any and all help that, like, is going to come up the rear. I've kind of been the forward scout with a lot of other colleagues that we've done these things and for nonprofits, and the more resources available to survivors, the better. It's not a competition. It's not a race. We are in a fight to save lives. And if we could all end up on the same page, fine. Some people like Coke. Some people like Pepsi. Does it really matter? No, but just go with, support, if you love soda, support soda. If you want to help survivors get well, let resources fly. I am excited when I see podcasts like this come up, Survivor Voices pop up. Sia's been there, the ICU Survivor campaign, Liberation Point. Like, there are all these... Unbroken, yeah. I mean, like, the list can go on. I feel like I'm at the Grammys. Like, I hope I didn't forget anyone.
No, in fact, I will provide links to these resources that we briefly mentioned for sure, so that people can, who are either, for anybody who are victims of bullying or program or both, or bullies themselves, because I wanted to just I kind of want to like wrap it up a little bit, but
let me just make one more point.
Wanted to go ahead, please.
Yeah,
please.
One more point is that I was doing some research last night. Those who are bullied like into adulthood, like if the bullying started as a child and that pattern continues in their lives, they are 9 times more than the average person to commit suicide. Just know that,
Right.
okay? So when you're bullying someone, you're raising their average of the likelihood that they will take their own life. So let's try and not commit murder against each other. We need to support each other. And instead of getting on the battle bus, okay, let's get on a different bus and rally around resources and survivors that are stepping forward to do good things for those of us who have been harmed by animals that tortured us and robbed us of our childhood at gunpoint. Like let's get off that freaking riot bus and let's riot about something else. You know, and that's really where I stand.
Let's change that focus back to the institutions and people who caused the harm in the first place, not fellow survivors. Like, do not attack fellow survivors. Like, it's pretty clear. Don't do that.
Yeah, I want the staff member that molested me. I want his head on a stick. Okay. I'm not making a homicidal threat. I'm just saying.
Metaphorically
speaking, bring me his head on a stick, okay, and I'll throw a party.
Exactly.
But I don't want survivors' heads on any sticks, okay? And I don't want.
No, you want this guy to lose. You want him to lose his job, to suffer the indignity of having people understand what he really did. All of that stuff. So, the idea of being professionally shamed for these horrible actions that you took for money, that.
There is justifiable anger. It exists, okay? So let me be angry at that dude, all right? But I will not tolerate, and I'm encouraging the survivor community to agree that we are not going to tolerate this behavior. If someone is bullying or you see it, block them, okay? Like, or reach out to them and say, hey, are you okay? Like, are you suffering? Like, can I help you? Like, let's either reach out to them and offer help or not. It's everyone's individualized decision, but they deserve help as much as we do. We may have to reach farther to try and help them, but they may not want to be helped, and that's not our call. We can't do it all. But, why continue to suffer? Have we not suffered enough?
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of really what I'm saying. So there.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. And, I've been thinking a lot about this too, about bullying and how the bullies are created and sustained. And there, to like kind of put a pin in it, there are a few common aspects of bullies, at any age. And we should realize that, as you said, bullies are not born, like they're created. And in this case, created by the programs that these kids were a part of.
Absolutely.
And people who allow themselves to bully are denying this other important aspect, which is empathy towards their victims, who also, in this case, happen to be fellow survivors. Because, I mean, if you were talking specifically about survivor to survivor bullying, bullies that practice learning how to blame others for what they do. Because it's shameful, and so they're going to project out their guilt onto somebody else for whatever reason. It's not even that important what that is, but the idea that they're blaming people for what they have in their closet, so to speak.
Right. And they may have a valid point. Okay?
They feel entitled. They feel entitled to do whatever it takes to get their own needs met at the expense of others. And
the methodology.
Most importantly, I want to say this, is that this always comes from a place of fear. Every time. They can't face their own fears, so they have to act out on others. Like, it's an important thing when you see someone engaging in bullying to, if you have the fortitude to engage with that bully, especially if you're not the target, to look at and examine what they're afraid of. What is it? Like,
Right.
is it that you don't feel adequate yourself? What's going on there? Because as survivors, we should have all this empathy to understand that sometimes these things happen and people act out, and we can rally around these suffering people. Ironically, these bullies may be suffering more than the next guy, and they also have an increased risk of suicide. The bullies themselves.
Right.
Right.
And for the bullies, and for those who can, if they're able to self-identify, which may not be the case, as a therapist, I will offer, if there's anyone out there listening and saying, whoa, like, this is me, or like, oh, if they're aware of their behavior, I'll make the offer right now. I will help you, like, on the house. Like, I will help you understand your behavior. If you want the help, I will help you.
There's another person that, yes, and there's another person that we know, Dr. Kevin Fall, who also has an open invitation for a free 30-minute consultation to listeners of this podcast for any reason. Like, he's a doctor of psychology. He's highly trained. He did amazing things with his own son when he realized that he was being a bully parent. This is amazing. He saw his son, like, starting to act out, getting into criminal trouble. There was a divorce. He was a part-time weekend, good-time dad. He moved away, went back to school, saw from afar his son declining. And what he didn't do was send his kid away. What he did do was invite his son to live with him, and then admitted all of his own faults. And they collaborated together and created a new bond and a new plan, and it still didn't work for his son. Like, he was still, like, going down the wrong road. And so he kicked it up a notch and said, look, this is how it's got to be. I can't continue to watch you kill yourself. So let's do this together. And they wrote a book about it. And I'll throw that in the show notes too. But what I'm saying is, this guy, I offer communication training to people myself. There are many, many resources out there that people can take advantage of without any obligation. I know that that Sam Gerson, her plan for providing free legal and counseling services to survivors. I mean, there's stuff happening that the bullies can't touch, which is very cool.
And we're
so
doing
they can yell and scream all they want about what they think is going on, but what's really going on is that there are a number of people out there who are actually helping people, and I want to, continue down that road and bring awareness to the fact that there are these negative people out there, and
there always will be.
They need our love too. It's not right to bully people, but let's recognize that they're suffering as well.
They are, and I just want to say, I mean, I don't like how their methodology is hurting people.
Sure.
They have to acknowledge, like, stop hurting people. You hurt me, you're hurting my friends, you're hurting survivors. You don't know if the person that you're picking as your target is contemplating suicide. You don't know if they're, like, about to relapse. You don't know if you're going to send them to their dealer. Mm-hmm. You don't know the outcome. So let's not mess with fate, okay? Like, let's either, do it one-to-one, and by doing it publicly, it's even worse. I mean, like, why? Like, I know why, but stop it. Just, it's like I want to backhand you and be like,
Right.
Stop it. Nobody likes
Sure.
you. Your followers think you're awesome, but they're more afraid of you than they are fond of you. Trust me.
Right. That leads into the idea. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, if you go to my Facebook page, please don't hack it. There's a post, there's an there's an icon there, that for stop bullying. And if survivors want to take that, and you can even use it for the podcast, take it, repost it, talk about it, start the conversation, tell what happened to you. Don't use names. Let's not bully back, okay? But let's be classy but sassy,
right.
and let's pass on the stop bullying with a handprint in it. It's like begging, like, please stop, and take it and forward it on, and we got this. We're fucking survivors. I mean, like, come on, like, we got this, okay? Like,
absolutely. I think we did really well. We didn't mention any names, but you know what? What's interesting about not mentioning any. What's interesting about not mentioning any names? Exactly. The people that we're talking about know exactly who they are, and that should be a big clue. A big clue to the people that are listening to this, who are participating in this kind of bullying. That you know exactly who we're talking about.
Exactly. And hands down, and I would encourage other survivors, if you're going to talk about your experience, naming the person, it only gives them more power. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't even have to name. You can call them your bully or the bully, and don't even give them the power. Let them guess, because they know who they are already.
Right, because the bully will name you all day long.
All over the place.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
oh my gosh, all over the place. We're going to spread your name all over the place, and what's cool on the other side, like I say, we don't even have to. Like, we're above that.
It's not even about being above. We're going to work smarter, not harder.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, above that depth, like, we don't have to sink. We can rise together and create better communities, more empathetic conversations, foster understanding that although, we've been through these horrific things, that there's no need to attack each other about it. Let's refocus our guns on the real enemy, so to speak, metaphorically.
Metaphorically, but what I'm saying.
Metaphorically.
Right? I'm the Queen of Darkness.
Well, okay. Liz Ianelli, the Queen of Darkness, thank you so much. I always enjoy talking to you.
Same here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and don't hang up. We're going to do a little pre-show wrap-up that you won't be able to hear. So sorry about that. And if you like what you've heard, please give us a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for all of the latest content. We don't even know what we're going to do next. So stay tuned for more shenanigans from the V2V podcast. I'm Marcus Parrish. Thanks a lot. This has been an episode of the V2V podcast Survivor Series. Please give us a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to stay current on all our content. And as always, thanks for watching.